Today we're going to talk a bit about adding music onto sporting events, the different types of music programs that have been run alongside sporting events, and the various opportunities out there available for bands. Just to give you a little background on myself, if you don't already know me from Born to Be Wide and various other things, my name is Michael Lambert. I work with a few different people, but my main source of employment is with the SPL Trust. I deliver a community music project on behalf of the SPL Trust called Music Box, whereby young people attend our local football club to receive free music tuition. So as well as that, I'm involved with managing a couple of acts and running various events, including Born to Be Wide and Wide Days. So we're just going to go around the panel, introduce everyone. If you want to start, Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex Smith. I work for GoEvents and Go North. I've also been involved with programming new music at the O'Neill Coldwater Classic in Thurso, the Scottish Six-Day Trials, and this year the UCI Mountain Bike World Cup.
Hi everyone, I'm Shannon Davis. I'm with the Rock and Roll Edinburgh Half Marathon. I coordinate marathons all across the US, and then I'm launching our international development over here. So Edinburgh is this weekend for me, and we have bands along every mile of the course and a huge finish line concert.
Morning everybody, I'm Davie Gardner. I'm based in Shetland. I have my own run my own business, Atlantic Age Music Services, which is a artist management and agency business, but also increasingly an events management business. In recent years, I've been involved with 2 visits of the tall ships to Shetland, the Inter-Island Games to Shetland, which is a sporting event is 4th only in size to the Olympics. So a pretty massive impact on a small community like Shetland, and we're just starting planning for the visit of the Olympic torch in June.
Hi, I'm Keith Easton. I have a company called Woosh Entertainments. We do a lot of things, but primarily we're involved in announcing and DJing at sport events. So 2 of my main responsibilities as DJ at Murrayfield and Hampden. So any music that you hear in those stadiums, I am pressing play on that and working with the various sporting governing bodies. We also do work for Scottish basketball, rat race and various other sporting events where they need somebody to give a bit of chat and play some music.
Hi, I'm Mike Jardine from Rare Management, and amongst other events we organise the Mountain Bike World Cup in Fort William, which has been going since 2002. Music's always been a key element of it at various levels, and this year we're doing something pretty special with the guys from Newfound Sound.
Right, guys, I mean, we're just going to go back round again and get a little bit more detail and background on the events that you've been involved in. I mean, Alex, would you be able to tell us just a bit about the music element and the sporting events that you've been previously involved in through GoEvent?
For GoSurf?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, GoSurf was the O'Neill Coldwater Classics, a world-ranking surfing competition held up in Thurso. I must say, first of all, we predominantly deal with new music and new bands. And the idea behind that was we were approached by O'Neill's to program a multi-venue showcase. So essentially we had 12 bands, a selection from Thurso and throughout Caithness and some from Inverness and the surrounding area. The benefit of that was, it was showcasing them in a unique context, connecting them with an audience that they probably wouldn't be exposed to, And obviously, a multi-venue format brings enormous energy to the town. Thurso lends itself really well to that, I would say one point that, a lot of the people who were there for the O'Neill Coldwater Classic, their personal schedules are so hectic that the last thing they really want to do is go and start watching music all night. So, paradoxically, it kind of had more impact locally, perhaps, than it did with connecting with the transient audience that were there for that event.
I mean, was that an intention for you, or were you there to deliver a music program for the participants and the attendees of the event, or was it specifically for locals? And
yeah, I mean, it was a little bit of both. I mean, we had, in partnership with Caithness Horizons, who have a venue up in Thurso. But O'Neill were fully on board. I mean, and we just simply didn't know how it was going to pan out. We weren't sure until we got up there, So nothing was intentional, but it was just purely about providing this extra provision, and while the context was there to kind of have this showcase up there.
Great. Shannon, can you just give us a bit of background about the Rock and Roll Marathon? Obviously, you mentioned that that's been developing in the States, and now you're looking to develop internationally.
Sure thing. Yeah, we're called the Competitor Group in the U.S., and we've got about 25 races nationwide. We're 15 years old, and our first race started in San Diego, and it was the concept of marrying music and running to make running more fun for participants. At the time, marathon running was really a serious sport and largely male demographic. So we wanted to make it fun and entertaining and incorporate the female demographic. And in doing so, we put bands on every mile and had a big concert at the finish. So we continue to hold true to those music roots. And with our international development, we are certainly doing the same thing. And we tend to focus on the local talent in every market, local and regional. So for instance, this race in Edinburgh, we have bands from all over Scotland and parts of the UK as well, in addition to bringing a couple international bands. So really the reach is far-reaching, and we like to discover new talent, as Alex said, and make it somewhere fun that a band can reach a new audience.
I mean, in terms of your program, obviously it's called the Rock and Roll Marathon, so presumably are you looking at a certain type of act to align with your event, or are you quite open in terms of your program?
No, we like to keep our program nice and diverse. We have music genres of all kinds on the course, and in every market it's a little different. So in Nashville, Tennessee, we have a largely predominantly country music focus, but we do have rock and roll and jazz and blues and R&B all over the place.
Okay, great. Yeah, Davie, can you give us a little background about the event you were involved with? We were chatting, in the green room about the tall ships and the other events that you've been involved in.
Yeah, well, Shetland's a fairly small community. It's an island community of 21,000 people. So when we have an event such as the Tall Ships, pardon me, or the Island Games, the Tall Ships brought 2,000 international sailors, for want of better words, into the islands last year. Previously had done that in 1999 for the first time. And the Island Games, for instance, in 2005, brought in 3,000 international athletes from other island groups all around the world. From Bermuda through to Gibraltar to closer to home, Jersey, Guernsey. And we recognised, we recognised fairly early on through Shetland culture and sport being closely linked that they were very common bedfellows, and that to have a large sporting event was a very good opportunity to promote the sort of unique culture of Shetland and the unique music it's made there right across the board, and to engage with the sporting audience, and also create some interest for people that possibly weren't interested in the sporting element to come out and get involved as an audience for a sporting event through music and through culture as well.
Great. Keith, now I guess what you do is slightly different to the rest of the panel, in as much as these guys are all involved in running events and running music programs alongside events. Can you tell us a little bit about your kind of line of work?
Yeah, that's probably best just to sort of give recent examples. Probably a lot of you saw that Edinburgh Rugby attracted one of the largest ever crowds. It was 37,000 at Murrayfield, which was a massive event for Scottish rugby and rugby. So I'm involved with working with Scottish rugby and Edinburgh rugby and putting the music playlists. You probably might be surprised, you might not. There's a lot of discussion and debate goes on. A lot of people maybe consider calling it the Americanization of sport, but now there's music being played during rugby matches. So when the clock stops in a rugby match, they're now wanting music. So there's the debate that goes on in terms of what music's to be played, and right up to the level of the chief executive at the top of Scottish Rugby getting involved. So
you don't just get to stick your iPod in and put
it's
on whatever you've been listening to on the way there.
No, and it's quite interesting getting the balance, because they just introduced this using rugby as the recent example in the Six Nations of playing music to get the crowd involved. So it's coming up with ideas, and a lot of people think obviously it's Proclaimers, Runrig, Fratellis. It's looking for something new is the constant challenge. I continually get sport governing bodies wanting the big tune, and what's the big tune? What's going to draw the crowd into the game? Basically, we need a new Chelsea Dagger. We need a Scottish band, okay, to write a tune that doesn't have any words, and the chorus that just goes na 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 that everyone can sing along to. That's basically what I'm searching for.
Do you have to kind of battle really hard to get some decent stuff in there, or do you find that they've got quite good taste in music, or they're quite aware of what's going on, or are they trying to put on Rod Stewart and Elton John?
It's fascinating. Obviously, you're dealing with different generations of people, and I don't say that to sound unkind, but I'm sitting with different people, and then I dared to suggest to Scottish Rugby that we actually ask the players what they want. Because if I'm a player, I'm playing for my country, and I'm wanting some music, is it to galvanise me? If you look at boxers going into the ring and, what's the tune? So it was quite interesting when we actually went back to the players to see what they suggested. But, ultimately at the end of the day, if the team wins, nobody's really interested. But I can be a scapegoat.
Right. And to what degree are you kind of able to program in what you'd like to put on? Is absolutely everything playlisted, or is it kind of like introducing radio shows where maybe 60% is previously playlisted and then you've got some space to put in what you'd like?
I would actually say it depends on what sport it is. At Hampden, at the football, it's good because at Scotland games are very conscious of playing a lot of new Scottish stuff, but ultimately the half hour, 20 minutes before kick-off, it's about adding to the atmosphere, so you've really got to go with the things that people know. I mean, I've had criticism on the Tartan Army message board for playing the wrong songs in the wrong order at half-time, and that's why Spain beat us. So and I'm being serious, so it means a lot to a lot of people. Then there's a generation of people that, at a Scotland game just want a pipe band out. So I have played a lot of newer stuff at Scotland games, but it's usually in the first 45 minutes when turnstiles have opened, and also with certain clubs, you've got to be very careful what you play, because I don't want to be responsible for starting a riot.
Yeah, absolutely.
But no, I say that football's better. I think the chance, other sports, you've kind of got to keep it quite mainstream, a more sort of radio playlist.
Okay, and do you ever get, you're saying you get some criticism on the message boards and stuff, do you ever get any feedback or anyone asking what was that band that you played?
I blog all my playlists. I put them all up on a blog because the people I know are kind of interested in that sort of thing. I think the best moment was when the Scotsman match support for a Scotland game actually acknowledged that the team had walked out to the strident tones of Biffy Clyro. So I was quite pleased with that, that somebody noticed. So
great.
Yeah, but it's music, as we all know, is a very personal thing. So try to keep 50,000 people happy is a thankless task.
Yeah, that doesn't sound easy. Mike, can you just give us a little background on the different areas that you've been involved in? Obviously, the Fort William Downhill Mountain Bike World Cup is, I guess, your kind of main event, but I know you're involved in some other things and the various music programs that you've had over the years.
I think for us, it depends very much on the event, but music's pretty fundamental to helping build the atmosphere, especially for something like if a big outdoor event over a big distance like the Mountain Bike World Cup. And because Scots are generally a bit more reserved, you need two things. You need good commentators to rev up the crowd, and good music to create the buzz and the ambience, and really the putting together music is pretty important. We don't deliberate and agonize over it. We just get the guys who do the music to put on really good bass-driven stuff that
so you have
some
music,
emotions going.
You have music playing throughout the event.
For the Mountain Bike World Cup, it starts first thing in the morning, and then it'll start off with some Johnny Cash or whatever, just chilled, mellow stuff, and it just builds up during the day, and then by the time of the finals, the last riders are coming down, it's just full on. And
Metallica.
3 years ago we had a downhill rock and roll when we had a Glasgow guitarist up there just giving it lots of AC/DC and thunder and whatever, and it's that trigger. It's that trigger to get the crowd revved up and excited and really playing a part.
Yeah, 'cause you have a different theme, or you have previously had different themes, and a couple of years back was the rock and roll theme. And why did you pick rock and roll?
Because it just the fit is perfect. You got to look at the lifestyle of the sport that you're involved in, and And downhill mountain biking in particular is a very young, dynamic, hardcore, extreme sport. Despite the fact that the audience we get is families, cross-generational. You know, a lot of people come because it's a great day out. What the athletes are actually doing is just mental. I mean, there's Granny and Grandpa with their young kids. The music helps. We do get the odd complaint if there's some sort of sweary rapper going on, and we've had to reduce that in the past. But generally, it works.
And in terms of live bands and live performers, what different things have you done over the years with regards to that?
We started off, we've always felt it quite important to relate things to the local community in the town. So initially we spent quite a bit of effort putting stuff on in the town. We put a stage in the middle of the high street in Fort William, and we'd get bands. You know, we've had people like Shugle Nifty and Peabog Fairies and various others. Just free performances on a Saturday evening, just to sort of create that link between the local community, because the event actually happens about 10 kilometres from Fort William itself, out at Nevis Range.
Right.
And then at the event, because we've got a big covered stage and lighting and all the rest of it, it's an ideal opportunity, and it's only used for the podium presentations. So the last few years we've had a showcase for a band there, and a few years ago during the Downhill Rock and Roll, we worked with a record company, and there was an online new bands opportunity, and we had about 40 bands, I think, submitted, and it came down to one, and then they came and had a showcase at the event.
Great. I mean, just to set the scene for everyone, obviously, I know the numbers that attended, I know, but can you just kind of give us an idea of how many people attend the event and how many people are in and around Fort William during the Downhill World Cup?
Yeah, it varies, but our busiest day is usually the Sunday, which is about 8,500 people out at Nevis Range, it's the same population as Fort William. Fort William's total population is about 8,500. And there's a huge infrastructure involved in getting everyone there and making it all work. But they're all there to have a good time, and we've got to put loads of things on so that they not only see top international athletes, but they feel enervated and engaged with the riders. They support the local riders, and luckily we have some really top British talent, and that makes a big difference. And the music and events and other activities, it's all just part of the whole process of creating a great festival atmosphere.
Great. I mean, I think it would be really good just to have a chat about why you think it's important to add music to your events. I mean, well, in fact, a lot of events are intrinsically linked with music. So, the varying levels that are there and where music sits for you, why you think it's important, and I guess why you think it's important for artists to be involved. Alex, I mean, in terms of the O'Neill GoSurf event that you did, why were they so keen to run a multi-venue music programme?
Well, I mean, I think there's obviously, like Mike's detailed, a kind of natural synergy between sporting events and music, and I guess that they felt that with that audience, some kind of provision there for them to kind of some activities to do at night, and it was just to kind of we discussed various things with them, and what kind of got them excited and us excited was a kind of multi-venue format. I mean, key as well was engaging with artists based in that region, connecting them with artists not from there, and helping to kind of firm up those relationships. That, not just roll a load of bands into town and leave the next day. So I mean, and I think that the key benefit to artists is just that it is the audience development. It is about exposing them to an audience that they wouldn't normally connect with in a unique context. And obviously working with local bands and bringing bands not from that region's really important, because Thurso, for example, is geographically fairly isolated. So it's good for them to set what they do in context with other kind of more established emerging bands, if you want to put it like that.
Sure.
I mean, similarly with the Scottish 6-day trials was exactly the same. I mean, we programmed a multi-venue showcase straight across Fort William High Street on that bank holiday weekend, and the same result. You know, massive energy into a really compact environment. We brought a lot of bands who'd never even been to Fort William, let alone would have ever thought about going and playing there. You know, and we had a range of locally based bands, so it really helped them to kind of set what they do in context and go, okay, that's the standard, and kind of form those relationships, you know.
Yeah, if you wondered about the Michael Parkinson, that's really interesting. I did know it already. But in terms of the O'Neill event, was that completely free, or was that charged, or was it an income generating thing?
No, it was a completely free event. I mean, that's a separate issue, but you know, it was a completely free event. Yeah.
Shannon, how does that work for yourselves? Obviously, the rock and roll marathon is very important that there's a music element there, I would imagine.
Certainly, yeah. Music is kind of the key to our events. It's what sets us apart, or at least we like to think so. But like Alex said, it's more about creating an atmosphere and not just making the run fun, because that is our primary goal, you know, to make the runner experience an excellent one and something they'll always remember, but also to create a sense of community within that particular venue. And so we kind of like to create 13 mini concerts in each little neighborhood. And in doing so, we hope that spectators come out and listen to the band and cheer on runners. And because, I mean, there's really nothing more boring than running 13 miles through a dead city with no one there.
Someone run 13 miles is
well,
probably
yeah,
even more
that's
boring,
probably
yeah.
worse.
I mean, you mentioned earlier that marathons tend to be fairly male-centric.
Mm-hmm.
Was Adam Music, was the idea behind that to bring families out and to bring
Certainly, make it more of a family fun environment, and also just create more of a social atmosphere. Music obviously has a natural tendency to do that. So by adding music, we increased the community and added the party element, and it's kind of become this 13.1 mile block party, if you will.
Right.
So it's like a moving concert.
Yeah. Davie, up in Shetland, how does it work, and what are the reasoning for kind of adding a music program? I know you touched on this earlier, but just to get a little bit more detail and the kind of impact that has.
There's multi-reasons that you do it. The main one really was, in the first and foremost we were asked to do it, was to provide entertainment for the visitors, give them a positive experience of visiting a small community like Shetland, showcasing what you have culturally and musically. But I think for me the main thing was actually bringing that two communities together, because at the end of the day, as I said, we had 2,000 ship's crew. Now that's 10% of the island's population appearing suddenly one day on the islands, and doubling the size of the town in Lerwick that we were there. So to engage with them, it was the obvious thing to do. To try and break that down further, we had what we would call a rock and roll stage in loose terms, and we had a more a folk music traditional stage, which were more associated with up in Shetland. And that sort of gave everybody an idea what they might like in what area, and we actually used the word zoning music, so we had heavy metal on at a certain time. We had young band showcase on at a certain time, maybe less experienced performers. We'd given them their own sort of very focused area on the stage to say, this is not the finished article you're having in front of you, you're seeing in front of you here, but it's a, it's a means to an end.
Yeah.
And what the whole thing was to bring that community, so either the sporting people, the artists or the athletes, together with the local community, and as everybody else has said, create an atmosphere around the town that was conducive to the positive well-being of the whole event.
I mean, just to get a kind of idea of scale, I mean, how many people were in attendance at these events?
Well, as I say, the total population of Shetland is 21,500, and if you consider it for the tall ships again, 2,000 extra crew appeared in. The island, the town that we were holding the event in, Lerwick, is a population of 7,500. So it was a fairly big impact on the day, or the 4 days of the event. But overall, the events generated 27,000 visitors. Now, that doesn't sound a lot until you consider the size of the population.
Like quite a lot, yeah.
And if you took the population, for instance, of Edinburgh, and you did that, you doubled it over a period of 4 days in terms of visitor influx, it's a fairly big impact. And what we also had to do was try and ensure that we had a music program that was in line with the demographic of people we had there, because in terms of the ship's crews or the athletes, we had people from Kazakhstan, we had people from Bolivia, we had people from Canada, all over the world, and we had to make sure that the program was conducive to what they wanted to hear when, they came to a port to party, in effect.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that sounds like a really good opportunity for local bands, and if there's a big showcase there, I mean, did you find that the bands really benefited from being part of that?
Massively so. I mean, at the end of the day, they were getting paid for doing it because there was an investment in their time. We recognised we should do that. We had headline bands like the Levellers for the local entertainment, which was a band that we felt also would be, I suppose, although might not be known in Kazakhstan or Bolivia, would be the kind of music that would be conducive to them enjoying themselves as well.
Yeah.
And a more family-orientated night we had, for instance, Bjorn again, which we knew would appeal to a full international audience. Everybody would know the music. It was good for a party atmosphere, for a family atmosphere. But the main benefits for the bands were, the exposure being seen in front of, I think over the period, each of the large rock and roll stage, we had about 4,000 or 5,000 people each night. The folk music stage, 2,500 people. That's big audiences. I mean, again, you're looking at 20% of the population being at that stage. But for most of the bands that don't get a chance to perform at these kind of events, the other benefits were not only being seen by large numbers of people and the experience of playing to them and selling CDs at the same time, but it was the opportunity to perform in a main professional production surroundings where they had big PAs, they had lights, they had the real engineers there. It was a very positive development experience for them as well. Really good just to get an idea of what kind of benefits are there for bands. I mean, Mike, when you've put on acts there at the Downhill before, have there been real benefits for those bands over and above maybe getting a fee or a trip to Fort William and to watch some downhill mountain biking?
I mean, I think apart from anything else, it's given some of them a flavour of performing in front of big crowds. It has to be said that the crowds are there to see the event. So the music is an add-on. So I think, when we've had bands on at 4:00 in the afternoon and it's bright sunshine and everyone's getting ready for the 4-cross finals coming up, they're not probably that interested in storming the stage or giving great adulation to the bands.
Yeah, so I guess if there's not that real focus on the band at that particular time, are there any things that you kind of do around it to ensure that the band have had some sort of platform? So even if if everyone's not paying full attention and catching the band name, do you have PR companies that plug in?
Oh yeah, I mean, it gets promoted on the website through Facebook, through email updates, etc. So there's always a tie-in with whatever bands are there. But the other side of that is if there's a specific music program in town where the bands are the priority, which is going to be the case this year, then obviously it's a very different situation than having the almost incidental music at the event, where it's more about engaging people and sort of giving people little things to latch on to at the event, because the priority at the event is the sport.
Sure.
So the music is a supplementary thing. It's an add-on. It just adds to the whole experience. Whereas, if we do something in the town, the music is the priority. So the bands will take centre stage there.
I mean, in terms of your programming, how do you go about selecting artists, and what have you got in mind when you're looking for bands to perform?
I think in the past it's been, you've been trying to tick various boxes, and because we've got quite a wide spread of age groups and all the rest of it, you can't go too hardcore. The serious downhill mountain bikes would like the latest sort of thrash metal or whatever. Whereas we have to be a bit more circumspect and try and find bands that are going to be of interest to international visitors, folk coming up. 60% of the audience comes up from the south, from England. So we have we've got 40% come from England, 60% basically from Scotland, 40% from England. Right. So we've got a large travelling audience that are coming to the event. So you try and find things that are just put a smile on people's face and a nice sound, upbeat.
Do you kind of sit in the office with all the demos and stuff and going through trawling the internet trying to find the next band? Or
no, I wish. We've asked people in the past. We used to work we used to have an office above the venue, so the guys in the venue used to help us out with giving us names. Leith Records in the past, when we did some stuff with them. Now you guys, hey, you guys know what's happening. We just want the right thing there.
Sure, and presumably you're kind of busy enough running the event.
Yeah. It'd be great to spend all the time listening to CDs, but now I'll leave that to the others.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, guys, in terms of the actual program, it would be good just to kind of go through everyone or leave it open. But how do you go about selecting the programs for your event? Alex, you mentioned that it was very much an emerging program. It's in Thurso. I mean, how did you go about finding the act?
Well, I mean, we have fairly clear routes to most of the kind of emerging and new bands around the Highlands and Islands. We have direct access to a lot of those bands. So we kind of picked the bands who were fairly active, who we thought would be a neat fit. It's a cross genre thing, so we didn't have any agendas there. Yeah, there's a wealth of artists to pull from, so we just kind of we just put it out there and
so it wasn't a kind of submission process like there would be with Go North.
No, not necessarily. I mean similarly with what we did with Rock the Fort, we wanted to kind of take a broad range of emerging bands, put them in front of an audience in a location that they wouldn't be part of their normal kind of touring route, so they just wouldn't think about playing in. And local audiences in that region probably haven't accessed most of these bands, as we found out. So I mean, the program agenda there was different again. I mean, we were looking to take a little bit of a risk, see what would work. So we had bands like Bronzo Skylift, from Bronzo Skylift to Panda Sue and I Built Collapsible Mountains, Mitchell Museum, bands like that Fort William was never in their line of vision, and and expose them to local audiences and obviously the trials audience as well, and help both those audiences connect, and more importantly, connect them with local artists there as well. I think that's really important,
Shannon, how do you guys pick your bands?
Well, we actually have a lot of facets to the race. So we're not one venue. We're all over the place. So we really cater more towards the community. You play AC/DC to pump up your crowds. Well, we certainly can't play AC/DC at 8 o'clock in the morning when there's a old folks home just down the road. So we play to the community concerns a lot of the times. And then also just the nature of the event is it's a moving concert, really. So, Keith has a band playing at the first mile marker, and they're only going to be playing for 30 minutes, but they need to be exciting and fun, and also at the same time a little bit on the choir end because they're by a big community. So there's a lot of factors that go into finding that perfect band for each stage, and then certainly the playtime and the experience that those bands have is factored in as well. And then in addition to that, you have the genres of music. We want something of a little bit of everything out on the course, so there's a lot that goes into it.
If you're doing these all over the place, presumably you don't have your finger on the pulse of every single area's local kind of music tastes and music scenes. So do you have teams of people locally based, or do you outsource that to an agency, or how does that work?
Yeah, we do it a little bit differently in each market. So specifically here in Edinburgh, we did a major call out for bands on the radio via our partnership with the Scotsman, so in local print advertising. We did a bunch of stuff on our website and Facebook, and really, encourage people to submit their requests for the local bands that they wanted to hear on course. And then in addition to that, we had local feelers in the market that kind of had a better pulse on the scene and could suggest better bands.
And how do you keep your eye on quality? Do you kind of have, or does someone within the organisation have final say on what does and doesn't get put on, or is it a kind of...
Yeah, there's actually a team of us, and we have a few of us in the U.S., and then there's a couple of us over here as well, and then we incorporate the local, wisdom person, the person that has the most knowledge of the local environment, and we sit down and listen to every band submission. It's a long day. Some bands are still up and coming for sure, and you listen to a few of their songs, and if they kind of catch your attention within that first 30 seconds, you give them another listen. If not, you kind of see if they'll fit somewhere else, maybe somewhere quieter on the chorus, and who knows.
Okay. And Keith, we spoke earlier about the selection process, and obviously you sit down and have a lot of meetings and deliberate over whether you should play the Fratellis or Paolo Nutini. But how do you program the stuff that you are allowed to kind of have your say on, and how do bands kind of how do bands get in touch, and how do bands go about getting played?
I'm quite happy to receive music from people. I say it's great to be in a position to expose bands' music to a wider audience. I think it's interesting, just like what Shannon's saying, that a band I know, I was aware of the Rock and Roll Marathon because of what I do. So you want to get your bands out there. So I want to sort of give that back without that sounding too cliched. So I have had bands get in touch. So obviously they've done a Google search, and you can find me and you can find our company, and that's great. And I like that when a band is proactive. I'm sure most of the people in the room, you want to get your music heard. I'll give just slightly off topic, just as an example. I get sent a lot of music. There's a promotion company called Shoot Music that push me Snow Patrol, Coldplay, all your your signed acts through labels to get it pushed in. And because of that, I sent some music back to them. And it was an Edinburgh-based musician, Alan Davison. One of his tracks was used by ESPN to kickstart their FA Cup coverage. So just through the sort of networking knowledge, where you maybe wouldn't think, oh, I could send my music to a television station and it could be the backing track for just 20 seconds at the start of a Sky Sports programme or a ESPN or the BBC. There's all these opportunities that you just begin to think just from being connected through a band playing at an outdoor event, that you think, oh, that's quite a good idea.
I guess you're in quite a good position there, obviously, that you're involved in receiving music, so you know where to send it to. How should bands who just don't know where to send that to, I think there's a great opportunity there for potentially for you to play one of their tracks at Hampden or at Murrayfield in front of 30,000 people.
Absolutely. I mean, I do, I submit my playlists back to these promotion companies. A lot of promotion companies want me to mark it out of 10 and do things. I prefer to say, here's what I played, and then they can feed back to the record companies that the music was played. So I'm more than happy to sort of spread that, because we've all been in the position of just, spamming out to people our music, and I know, and it's tough and it's challenging. So just that new contact, and just to think, all right, I mean, the OK Social Club had their track was used on Soccer AM on Sky Sports as a back in bed when they were going through the goals in the championship or something like that. So thinking ahead as well to the Olympics, Commonwealth Games, all the opportunities where the broadcasters and radio stations. I mean, I think you look at like a band like Cassidy's tracks used as the back in bed by BBC Scotland for their Scottish Cup coverage. As I said at the start, we need a new 500 miles. We need a new Chelsea Dagger. So if there's musicians out there, we do need that. I'm sick of going to these meetings and saying, right, okay, it's the old favourites, and it's nothing against those bands, but I'd love to be able to go to the Scottish Football Association and Scottish Rugby and say, there's this great new Scottish band, they've got this great new tune, I think we should use it. I mean, interestingly, this is what's fascinating about it. Try to stay on topic here, but Scottish Rugby said the English fans have got Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. The Welsh supporters are great at bursting into song. The Irish supporters are great at bursting into song. Scotland's rugby, the fans don't have anything to start singing. So during the Scotland games, I was having to play Loch Lomond at 3 different edits to try and get the crowd to sing it. Now that's very difficult when you're getting pumped off France and England. So there's this desire that's, I'm not trying to be fanciful about it, but we, as a nation, we're looking for these songs, and football clubs and rugby clubs are having it. What's their song when they score? So there's an opportunity for someone to.
And so I guess the key is it's got to go na 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 or something along those lines.
There's a guy at Western Scotland University did a whole dissertation about the relationship between music and sport, and if anyone wants to see it, I can get you a copy. It's fascinating. Yes, but basically, great. A 4/4 beat and no lyrics is basically it.
Why have you not written it yet?
I know, I'm putting it out to everybody. I'm being serious. It's, I'm bored of playing it.
I mean, just to kind of bring things back down and look at the kind of practicalities of it, I think there's maybe a perception that with bands that big events have massive budgets for entertainment, and that's perhaps not the case, but just looking at something like the Edinburgh Rock and Roll Marathon, obviously music is quite intrinsic to that. I mean, how do you go about supporting your artists? Do they receive fees and riders, things like that, or what's the deal there? What should bands expect if they were selected to play?
Well, a lot of that is factored in with the application process. So we ask bands, what they typically make on a, 1 hour gig, and then we factor that in. We do have a budget. It's not a huge one. I think that's a misconception, even though it's Rock and Roll Marathon and that is our title event. Really, it's not like we have oodles of money to unfortunately invest in the talent, but we do a lot of other coverage in regards to PR and website exposure and emails to the audience. And you have a natural audience of 5,000 runners, and with that you have 10,000 spectators, and then on top of that you have our entire series, which has 500,000 runners in the U.S. So there's a reach there. It's not an obvious reach, but it's there, and that exposure is certainly what we help.
Yeah,
with.
do you do a lot kind of proactively to support that? What kind of things do you do?
Certainly. I mean, like I said, we promote bands as much as the event almost. If you'll notice in Edinburgh specifically, we have a huge band call out in the Scotsman. We've had a few articles now on a couple of the bands all throughout the UK, and we recruit internationally as well. So we really just we rely heavily on the promotions end of things as our payment towards the band, and then on top of that, the headliner act usually brings in a lot of coverage. So whenever we plug the headliner, we pick a few bands on course to plug as well. So again, it's just that extra PR effort that gets their name out there.
Okay, I mean, Davie, I guess being based up in Shetland, there's a few logistical concerns there as well. If you're bringing bands from elsewhere, do you guys kind of cover travel as part of the deal, or are those extra things put in place for bands?
Yeah, we do. There's most of the bands that we put on in Shetland, because it was publicly funded events, were based around providing a local showcase. So most of them were located in Shetland, but we had a lot of Shetland musicians, high-profile bands, mostly playing on the folk music or traditional scene that we wanted back in Shetland for that event, and so. Yeah, their transport and accommodation, if they still required it in Shetland, was paid for them, and a professional fee agreed. Right through from the levelers to Bjorn again, who were obviously dealt with on a contractual professional basis, right through to the professional bands were dealt with in that way. The local bands, yeah, there was a big element of exposure, there was a big element of experience, playing to an audience, the production experience. These were the stages that you see in Glastonbury with the big sound systems, all professional right the way through. But each and every one of them got paid, something in line with what we considered their worth to be. And that included the young bands, simply to say, we're asking you to be professional, we're asking you to prepare for this event. You've had 6 months warning that you're playing it to improve yourself. We gave them guidance right along the way, especially for the young bands to get there. But in recognition of that, we also made sure they were paid on the day. They had access to the green room and the riders that we provided, which were fairly limited. But, we tried to give them the full experience and a full thank you for saying, yeah, that was it, and meeting the quality control desires that we had as a promotional unit to say, you're going to be paying to 5,000 people tonight, rather than the normal 20 that you play to. We expect the best from you, so in return, we provide that. So yeah, everything was covered for them in that way, even if it might have been seen to be a reasonably paltry sum.
Yeah, that sounds really fair, though. I mean, Mike, in terms of the kind of fees and hospitality and riders, do you invite bands to take part for the entire weekend? Do you invite them along? Do you put them up? Do you feed them with champagne and take them out for seafood dinners? Or, what's the kind of line?
Bowls of blue M&Ms, yeah. It depends. I mean, if it's something in the town, it goes back to this thing, whether it's the music is the key or it's an additional thing. If it's in the town, then we've always paid for bands and tried to get the best deal or whatever and put them up, but pretty minimal riders, because we're talking about an outdoor gig in Fort William, and then if it's stuff at the event, it's always been treated more of a showcase and an opportunity for the bands. So it's been almost like a prize for some of the new bands that have been there. Unless, there's a guy, Andy McGlone, the guitarist that we had, the rock and roll guitarist, we paid him a couple of years ago.
Okay. I mean, I'm quite conscious that we've only got about 10, 15 minutes left, so we maybe open this out to questions and take it from there. I think there's one.
Hi there. Is that on? Yeah. Hi. Shona Maguire. I'm a sort of left field electro pop musician. I go by the name Plum. How, I don't have a manager or a record label. I was with Pimbecula, but they closed. How do artists like myself make ourselves known to you for these events? Because I would love to play at every single one of them.
Okay, we'll go through every single one then. Alex, you're going to put on Plum.
Yeah, I mean, I think that every event is managed and programmed in a completely different way. I mean, I think with GoSurf, we really wanted to take a lot of Highlands and Islands-based bands as per our remit. GoEvents' wider kind of commitment to developing artists in the Highlands and Islands, and not just artists but music businesses. So I think that for that we kind of reached out to acts that we felt had worked really hard across that year, who kind of could really benefit. I mean, new bands are looking to develop audience all the time anyway, so it's a lot of bands who maybe hadn't played that and a couple who had played up in that part of the world. With regards to the downhill, another one, I mean, we're kind of pretty aware of the emerging market in Scotland, so we'd kind of try and we didn't take a submission process of any kind, for example. So I guess it is that in that respect, it is about us kind of coming to the artist, I guess, in that way.
So what sort of things do you think artists like Plum or independent artists could do just to make themselves more visible to events? No one wants to take it yet, Alex. I mean, you're an event organizer, you're looking to program music. What sort of things are you looking for?
I think it just entirely depends. I mean, I think you have to be conscious of the run of the program around any event. I think that's a concern, of course. But I think that we're always looking for, just for example, with what we've done with the downhill this year, it is about kind of connecting fairly well respected and established voices in Scotland with a lot of new bands, and helping kind of firm up those connections and showcase, the best kind of lineup that we can, as diverse as we can.
I'd just like to say, since ours is more of like an application process, what we really look for is the professionalism in your application. So, the nice headshot, and we're not saying invest a ton of money, but just show the professionalism, show that you're serious about your talent and where you want to go with it. And then I'd also say a diverse portfolio is helpful. If you can sing a national anthem and you can really belt it out, put that on the resume, put that on your application, etc. If you can sing a variety of genres, then again, put that on there as well. You never know what type of audience you're appealing to. So as long as you denote that on things, I think that's only going to help you.
Does anyone else want to come in on that one? Or
Yeah, I'm more than happy to receive music, and it's just like the obvious ones. Don't send large MP3s attachments, like send links to SoundCloud and Bandcamp. I think it's an obvious thing, but it's always good to mention it. And then, I can't guarantee to play it, but it's really good to be able to be sent stuff, because I'm genuinely interested in listening to new music first and foremost. So, yeah. I
think that's really important, and kind of Plum excluded because you're uber organised. But there's loads of bands that I'm really into that I've seen live, and I know that I want to program. And then I go on their website and there's no music, or there's no link to their Bandcamp, there's no link to SoundCloud, and I think, right, shit, how am I going to let the event organizer hear this before I program it? I know they're great, but the band don't have the stuff there.
Can I just add something? I think one of the things to do is to look very closely at events in your area. I'm not actually going to say I would bring you to Shetland when I'm being asked to showcase predominantly Shetland stuff. But I think that's not unique to an island community. That can be unique to Edinburgh or Glasgow or to Thurso or whatever. Look out for events in your area and suggest to these people that it might be a benefit to add music to that. Mountain biking in Fort Williams, it's not an obvious thing maybe to have music on when you're looking at it, but if you think that could work for me, get in touch with your event promoter, look at the demographic of the audience that they're looking at and say, hey, I'm into left field electro music. I think that would work for you. There's no point in getting into somebody that's promoting a program of traditional music with that. But I think if you're looking at the demographic of what you're doing, and maybe again Fort William with mountain biking and the energy that takes, is one of the places that you look for. So what we were trying to showcase in Shetland was not only the individual artists, but the community itself. So if Edinburgh thinks you're a good representative of Edinburgh musically, it's worth tapping into that and trying to, build yourself up as part of that community, rather than saying, oh, well, I'm well known in Edinburgh, I need to start looking at Newcastle now, or Liverpool, or Aberdeen. They're not going to be interested in you unless they have a reason to, but Edinburgh would have a reason to be interested in you because you're from Edinburgh and would be a good representative of that community. So, think along those lines and push yourself forward to events that might not necessarily look at first glance to be a music-orientated event, that might suddenly realise, God, yeah, we could benefit from somebody as talented and professional as that partnershiping with us.
So can I just add, just an example, there was so many things go on in Edinburgh as a city. Just use an example, last year there was the Touch Rugby World Cup, there was the World Duathlon, there was the World Archery, Michael, keep me right on that, Golden Old Days, Hockey Festival, all these had live music at it in Edinburgh. And what we do as a company, we constantly on the Events Scotland website, City Council, see what events are coming in. That's how I knew that the Rock and Roll Marathon was coming in. So yeah, it's be proactive, think outside of BBC introducing and your sort of normal ways, and it's amazing what you find. I mean, that's how we get a lot of the business in terms of what I do and working at sport events. But it's try to keep your finger on the pulse. It's really, really important to Google,
Great. Anyone else got questions? We'll take two more, I think. In the front. Is that Pete? I can't really see.
Aye, yes. We on? Hello?
Yeah, you go.
No, it doesn't seem to be. Oh, yeah, there we are. Yeah, I was just wondering, obviously the benefits from coming and playing at an event, such as been described, are sort of great exposure and all that sort of thing. What's the PRS situation? Presumably more straightforward for Murrayfield or Hampden, those type of places. But when you've got sort of temporary events, is that something that bands can benefit from when you've got about 8,000 people in a field, at a sporting event?
I think Stuart from PRS is actually in the room, or he's at the event, so if the panellists can't answer, then you might be able to tap him up later if he's not tiptoed out.
I'll confirm I submit PRS forms for Hampden and Murrayfield. That's me in the good books.
We were licensed by PRS, and every band, including the young bands, were listed as playing and submitted a playlist, a set list to go into the PRS for that. And so anybody that was due money were officially reimbursed. There's no real way of avoiding that if you're doing a professional job.
On behalf of the event that we're doing in town in conjunction with the downhill, that the venue has a license and we will pay a percentage of the box office, so the artists would get what they would normally get for playing a gig, and we'll just submit the set lists. Any other questions?
Hiya. I just wanted to ask, actually now coming towards the end of this, what you think the future is with music and sport here. I mean, at the minute it seems like some of the events, for example, Keith, yours are very established and traditional events, but with the others, music has been intrinsically linked to your events. And I was just wondering about the future of that. Are there going to be more dual events that are promoted around music and sport as a combined event, or is it going to be music in addition to sport? How do you feel that's going to go?
Anyone want to take that one? Yeah.
I think it's more and more important because people are wanting to attract more people, and particularly in a country like Scotland where football is seen as the national sport. What Scottish Rugby did on Saturday was created a day out where you went along, you could get a drink, there were bands playing outside, so yeah, it was creating the day out. Now, I mean, and then in Murrayfield they have the function suites open as bars. Now there's certain sports you couldn't do that in Scotland, sadly, but yeah, it's creating the day out, pricing the tickets accordingly, but that's what's about. I mean, I know with Scottish football, Scottish Cup final day, they're adding everything like face painters, and they have things on the periphery of the stadium. The Olympics are very much going to be like that as well, and I think it's going to be more, and we'll be much more aware in this country about the relationship between sport and music, and putting on a show obviously with the Olympics and obviously with the Commonwealth Games as well on the back of that in 2 years' time. So it's massively important because you're trying to get people out of the house to an event, and you can't just give them the 90 minutes or the 80 minutes of the sport. It's the whole experience, and it's buying the food and having the infrastructure. And I know from working with the so-called bigger governing bodies, they are very much aware of that and know they have to try and do more to get people in and spend extra money on the pie in the bovril, effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's something that's growing. I mean, I think there's a saturation of music festivals, and I think trying to attract an audience on a program of music is people have a lot of choices. There's not a lot of money. So I think tapping into an existing event that's already generated an audience that are there in that environment anyway makes perfect sense. I mean, just because they're there for another key area of interest, there's a good chance they also are music fans and music consumers. So it just makes perfect sense to kind of.
And what about the other way about? Davie, you mentioned earlier on that you found up in Shetland that the music was actually bringing additional people to the sporting event, and it wasn't just that music was,
Absolutely. I mean, in the Island Games context, it was an amateur sporting event of a very high scale, 3,000 athletes taking part, and that generated a lot of excitement in the community, but it also generated a lot of animosity because they said, you're spending £2 million in an event here, there's nothing for us. And that was the kind of disenfranchised party goer who was almost saying, what's in it for us? So we saw an opportunity there to say, okay, we can engage with the whole community here. We can bring that community in to the sporting event through music and hopefully bring the two communities together, which we managed to do. And by putting on the two events, we also ticketed them for certain elements, certain evenings, which brought in a fair bit of extra money. And just to endorse the point that was made there, we did likewise with the tall ships this year. We had a remit that was asked to showcase Shetland music. And I had a real struggle trying to get them to admit that they should try and bring in more people outside the local community, and to do that, let's have at least 2 headline bands. And they wouldn't give me the budget for that. So I said, okay, we'll ticket those 2 nights. Yeah. And what that ended up doing was bringing in 87,000 quid for an event funded by a local authority that they weren't going to fund, which was an extensively bigger income than we paid for the 2 bands to come into Shetland and perform. So, there's commercial benefits as well as community benefits with that, but I think it widens up, the whole context of the events and brings in extra people that might ordinarily say, well, I'm not interested in watching people running around the track or whatever. But they go to a music event that night, they meet with others that are involved and say, hey, yeah, I might give that a chance tomorrow. And it sort of engages everybody, I think, in a wider context.
Great, guys. We're going to have to wrap things up there. We're up at time. If we could just kind of thank the panellists for their time and valuable input.